So let's start. Firstly, welcome to everyone who's joining the symposium. It's fantastic to have people here today. We will record the session so that we can share it with people who are part of the YS network in Hong Kong and in Asia Pacific more broadly, who are unable to join us right now. There are, however, real advantages to being a live participant. That is, there are some quizzes in today's show, and there are some prizes that can be won. So I'm going to kick off, and I'd like to start off by saying, firstly, there's been such disruption in Hong Kong. I think all of us living through that will realize that. So it's delightful for us to be able to offer this Hong Kong Investment Symposium, and we hope it brings some joy and some, interesting learning to sort of break the monotony of what has been quite a difficult time. So absolutely welcome to everyone, and thank you so much for joining us. Now, what is so special about Young Investor Society is that it is a student-led project. And I think one of the things that I wanted to say in departing is that curiosity, discipline, self-motivation are all critical factors when it comes to investing. And so in a way, that is the hidden curriculum of the YS program. So my name is Richard Mcgillivray. I work for CFA Institute. I'm South African, but I'm based in Hong Kong, and I'm going to be the host for the Investment Symposium today. Now, I came to investing quite late in my life, and one of the things that I can remember feeling as I made this discovery was, why didn't I learn this earlier? And of course, as young investors, you will all know how important early investing and saving is. So it's so valuable, I think, to all of us that that organizations and individuals that stand behind YS make this learning available to young people early on in their lives and their careers. And I think that just to begin with, I'd like to thank our sponsors, NetDragon, Oxbow Capital Management, Credit Suisse, WIFA, and TradeWeb. Organizations who realize how important it is to make an early start in this critical piece of learning and understanding. So thank you so much to those sponsors. I think the sponsors really are, saving people from that discovery that I had of, wow, I should have really learned this much earlier. And now, of course, turning to investment professionals themselves who are supporting us. And we've got a really interesting symposium lineup today. And I thought I should just quickly go through the agenda for today's session. So let me just make sure I can do that. So first up, we have Kenneth Fong, who is a managing director at Credit Suisse. And his topic is my career as a research specialist in internet and gaming stocks. And we think that is such a fascinating topic and sort of sector focus, if you like, for today's symposium. Young people are digital natives, so to speak, and so are interested in and engaged with both the internet and the sort of gaming world. So it's wonderful to have Kenneth join us, and I'll introduce him properly just before his session starts. Then we're going to go on to 3 quick trivia questions. Now, let me just tell you what you need to do if you want to be in line to win one of the prizes, which are small but fantastic. So what you need to do is you need to correctly answer the question in the chat function, and you need to also enter a valid email address. So if you correctly answer the question, but we've got no way of reaching out to you with the prize, then that's going to be quite disappointing. So it might be worthwhile making sure you've got your email address saved or copied, I should say, so that you can type in a correct answer and quickly paste in your email address. I'll do my very best to accurately spot the first correct answer as we go through. So after those 3 trivia questions, just to make sure that we are awake and engaged, then next up we have Catherine Chen. Now, Catherine Chen is so interesting. She is the CEO and founder of Impact Investing. And I know that ESG has become sort of as a component that has been added to the YS curriculum. And it's just absolutely fantastic to have a live and active ESG investor, and particularly someone who is looking at impact investing. Of course, impact investing is one of the methodologies by which investors make sustainable choices, shall we say. And again, I will introduce Catherine properly when we get to her session. I should add, forgive me, that Catherine is also going to give us some fascinating insights into the world of private equity. Now YS is very focused on public equity, but increasingly private equity is becoming an asset class of interest. And of course, there is a relationship between private and public equity. So Catherine is going to give us some insights there. And then there'll be a second round of trivia. So if you missed out on the first opportunity, you've got a second one, another 3 trivia questions. And then we're going to wrap up with a question and answer session, which will give you an opportunity to ask direct questions that interest you. Ask those questions of our investment professionals who are presenting here today. So it is very much an exciting and relevant program. Now, I'm going to skip through myself and just introduce Kenneth Fong. So Kenneth is the regional head of gaming and lodging research and the head of China Internet Research, and he's based in Hong Kong. Before joining Credit Suisse, where he's a managing director, Kenneth worked with JP Morgan, Nomura, and Lehman Equity Research. Kenneth is also a chartered accountant and was an audit manager for PricewaterhouseCoopers for its Hong Kong and Washington offices. Kenneth also holds an MBA from Columbia University. So thank you so much, Kenneth. It's absolutely fantastic to have you here today. I'm going to stop sharing my screen now and give you a chance to share yours, and we'll pass the floor over to you. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you, Richard, for your kind introduction, and thank you for having me today. Okay, let me share my screen. Okay, you all see it okay?
We can see it okay, Ken.
Okay, great. Yeah. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to join my session today. So I will this is my background. Richard has already kind of a brief introduction of myself. So basically 22 years of working experience, started off with an accountant, and then after I did my MBA in the US, and then I did equity research for around like 13 years in the industry. So what I will do today is to tell you what do we do. I will also share with you some of the examples, how we look at stock, how we identify opportunities for investing, how we form our investment thesis, and what will drive the share price action. I'll also share with you some of the real life examples that we do. So to start off, this is generally what are the counterparts we deal with, and then roughly what we do. So for equity research, we analyze publicly listed companies. We look at the financial performance, the growth outlook for the company, for the industry, the management, the future growth potential, the valuation, whether they pay any like a dividend, how much we receive and how much we pay, and then to identify appropriate and attractive investment opportunity. Our clients, roughly, you can say both external and internal. External ones are those investment funds, hedge fund, mutual fund, family office, pension fund, etc. Are those of our external clients. So basically, we focus on specific sectors. For example, I focus on the internet and then the casino gaming sector. We identify some interesting investment idea, and then we will advise our clients, which are working in this kind of like a mutual fund, family office, etc. Internally, we have different departments. First, wealth management. Basically, they deal with high net worth individuals, also provide them investment advice. We will provide advice to their client as well. Second is the investment banking division. which they will do an initial public offering for some new companies. They also advise on some merger and acquisition, this is M&A activities, some corporate deals, corporate action. We are also involved in helping them to do kind of these financial transactions. And internally, we also deal with our trading department, basically execute, buy and sell order ultimately. Okay, we identify some good trade, good ideas, and then we are advised to our traders, and then they perform the buy and sell transaction for the clients. So this is what our clients externally and internally. So how do we form our investment decision? There are a couple of procedures that we generally look at. First, we look at what are the market opportunity, what are the market size, and then identify the key parameters, the driver, perform some fundamental analysis, do some number, calculate a forecast, form a valuation of this asset, and then we will interact with the clients and provide investment ideas. Let me start with an example, for example, like online games. So you all play TV games, right? Mobile games. So first, we look at, for example, when I want to understand the potential for the mobile game industry, we look at what is the market size first. For example, in China, the market size is roughly 300 billion of game revenue in China, renminbi. And how many gamers are there? In China, roughly 100 million of gamers. So this is your market potential, right? The revenue, the money that they generate, which the gamers pay, and then you have 600 million of gamers. And then you look at the key parameters. So what will make the gamers pay for the games, right? Because of course will be some interesting games, whether the games are attractive, and then whether there's any like a promotion activities or new games that actually can induce or encourage the gamers to pay, right? So you have good content, good games, good intellectual property, what we call IP, right? These are the parameters. Of course, there are some macro drivers. If the economy is good, income level go up, this will also drive them to have a higher incentive to pay. And then we look at how much revenue, how much game revenue that they will generate, to perform some analysis, do some forecast in the future, next few years, come up with a valuation, how much this company generate in terms of revenue, how much they earn, how much stock price or valuation this should worth, and then recommend it to the clients. So another real example is this one, NetEase. They launched a game, Harry Potter, in China and Asia. I'm not sure whether you play with it, but I'm sure that you all heard about the Harry Potter. They developed this mobile game introduced in China last year in September. So what we do initially is, okay, we look at what kind of game is it, right? Is it a role play game, strategy game, card games, right? So we start with what are the type of games, right? And then how they make money. How does this game make money? By selling some virtual items. And then we form an estimate how much revenue that they will generate, right? So we look at how many gamers are in the games, estimate how many of them actually pay, and their spending power, like how much they spend per day. And then we'll calculate what are the revenue implication the company can generate, how much NetEase will generate, and then to form a investment decision, whether this is a buy or a sell idea. Let me share with you the real report that we put out on this company when they launched the game. So we published a report in September 15, which is when the stock is launched. So this report, I won't go through in very detail, but I will show you what is our investment process. So first is you describe because a lot of the investor are not gamers themselves, right? So you need to start with, so what is this game about? What are the attractiveness for the games, right? The art style, the storyline, right, to start with. And then what are they, how are they compare with different games, right? I'm sure a lot of them already also play some like games developed by Supercell, like Clash Royale. This is one of the games which is quite similar. So we compare different types of games in terms of the for the developer, the storyline, graphic, the way they play, etc. And then we look at how they, some of the in-game activities. This is one of the battles system that they have developed, and how can the gamers involve and then buy some virtual item. We also look at some examples of how they can invite friends to join the games together, and how can they interact with the other to foster a more like a community culture, right? These are also important, as not only you pay, you actually invite more friends, that will actually makes the gamer, the potential actually bigger, right? And then there are some like in-game activities, like the sport competition, the ball inside. These are some of the interesting social elements also inside the games that also make it more attractive to the gamers. And lastly, how they promote the games by actually inviting one of the real character, Tom Felton, to promote the games to the gamers. And lastly, we also do some math estimates on how much revenue is generated. And let me show you the results. Right, this is our process, right? So what kind of things we look at for these online games, and this is the share price reaction. So the share price, this is the share price of NetEase, has come down, so together with the bottom market, but this is the point they launched Harry Potter. This is what the share price react, rallied 26% afterwards. So it actually showed you these games actually generate pretty meaningful contribution to them. And then by assessing the different elements inside, how they make money, how much they make, we help the investor to appreciate this potential. Right? This is basically one of the examples that we do. The other one is, this is a shopping apps in China. It's a Taobao, owned by Alibaba. One of the key things that they have done in September 2020 is to change the page layout to make a live streaming e-commerce as one of the key features. So we also, on top of playing mobile games, we also look at these shopping apps as well once in a while to look at whether they have any changes, whether there is any implications to the company. The third example I want to look at it, show you is this, short videos, right? In overseas, two popular short video apps include Quai. I think it's also quite popular in Southeast Asia, and TikTok. You probably heard about it, TikTok globally as well. So how do they make money, right? So in short, they make money in few ways. First, advertisement. When you scroll the screen, you will find this advertisement in between the promoting or selling some product. This is where they make money. Second is a live streaming. This is a online games live streaming where you can, there's a KOL, broadcast the game, and you can actually tip them. They also have some e-commerce inside where they will post some products where you can sell, and then they charge a fee when you sell product through them. And then they have other like a mini drama or other function inside. So you will notice that a lot of these things, you will also use it, right, in the daily time, like playing TV games, like shopping on the mobile, on the e-commerce app, like looking at short videos, right? But what we do is, on top of looking at it, we also look at its business model, how they make money, how are the growth driver, and eventually help us to link everything together to the financial models and calculate with a value, and whether there is a very attractive investment opportunity that exists on that. So this is basically some of the examples that we do from on the internet front. So online games, e-commerce, as well as short videos. Sometimes the share price are not only driven by the company's specific driver, but also macro driver. These two charts is pretty interesting. I want to show you as well. The first one is a Lenovo group. They make the PC games. So what have changed since 2012 or over the past 10 years is the introduction of this smartphone, right? So more and more of us actually use a smartphone, iPad rather than the PC. So Lenovo is a PC producer. So that's why IdeaPad, ThinkPad is what actually produced by them. Share price have been very weak from 2014 all the way to 2017 and 18 for obvious reason, right? Less and less people buy PC. Like I said, use mobile phone, we can actually interact with people, spend more time in, it's more convenient, right? To consume our time on mobile phone rather than actually using an actual PC. So their income level, sales level come down, same as the share price. But then you will notice there's a sharp jump in 2020. What happened? The COVID, the pandemic. So during the COVID pandemic, you probably will experience yourself as well. You, your sister, your brother, each have your own PC at home, having remote classes, remote lessons, right? So suddenly the demand on PC surged a lot. So some of the investors are able to identify this structural trend or able to generate a very decent return. If you look at it, $4 all the way jumped to 12, jumped by 3 times. So just because of the COVID that actually bring a lot of demand on the PC. So this is one of the examples when not only the company itself, how they make money, but also some of the structural change on the environment that will benefit the company in terms of the income. That is also something you also need to pay attention as well. So we have PC doing well, and then you step a little bit backward, right? What is the key component inside the PC? Chips, right? So this is another company, Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company. They produce chips in China. The same time, the Lenovo PC sales is strong. Same is the sale of the PC maker, the PC chips maker as well. So that's why you see COVID, you affect a lot of offline activities, but for these companies, the revenue actually benefits from this change in trend. I won't say this is lasting because things will get back to more normal eventually, but these are some of the in-between macro trend that we as a stock analyst also need to look at. Lastly, these are some of the skill sets we as an equity research analyst normally need. Financial modeling, so you need to good and interest in mathematics, accounting. You need to have insights on the industry, like to read books, read some of the macro stuff, newspaper, internet, to get more, not only for the stuff that you know, you're the relate to the stock you actually pay attention to, but what is surrounding it, that potentially, like I said, will also drive how the company, the industry evolve. The COVID is one of the examples that I brought earlier, right? And in fact, not only for chips or PC, even for mobile games industry actually benefit from the COVID to a certain extent, because people got locked down. They stay at home, nothing to do, and they consume the time on the mobile game and short video. Of course, after you form your models, you have the insight, you form an investment idea, you need to have good communication skills, writing skills, right, to actually promote your idea to your clients. So this is something that also worth investing. I think at the end of the day, communication and writing skill is not specific only to research. For the other in the finance industry, you need to have constant interaction with your clients. This is also important skills that you need to develop to prepare for the finance industry. And lastly, detail-oriented, accurate on financial numbers and avoid mistakes, because you provide the investment idea decision to the client. you need to be responsible for what you write and what you promote as well. And lastly, I also want to end with some food for thought, some ideas for you. A lot of us, a lot of clients always ask me what will change in the next like 5-10 years. I want to state a quote from Jeff Bezos. He's actually the founder and then the CEO of Amazon, one of the most successful entrepreneur in the US. He actually made a pretty interesting comment. He said a lot of innovators and strategies are obsessed on predicting how the world will change in the future. But very often, the most valuable thing is to figure out what will not change in the future. Focus on what will not change. I think that is something that is actually even more predictable and more visible. So what won't change? I want to share with you two ideas. One is how much you invest in yourself daily, consistently, persistently will actually make a huge difference. This is two pretty interesting formula. 1.01, basically 1% increase by each day, compound by 365, end up with 37.8. So basically, if you are progressing 1% every day, right, based on this math, you actually can multiply these skills by 37.8 times. Versus if you are stepping back 1% every day, it's not little every day, but if you compound this 19 high by 365, you only end up with 0.03. So we showed you how much difference between the two. So every persistent discipline, invest in yourself. Sometimes you may be saying, okay, it's just one day, I will skip 1 week. Yeah, I will just come back afterwards. But you can see the difference. Even like if you're persistent, disciplined, every day invest in yourself a little bit, it makes a huge difference compared to someone who doesn't move, or actually someone who actually moves backward on a daily basis. The other thing is at the end, your attitude, how you see things actually makes a very big difference as well. I want to share with you one last stories. One of the principal of a university asked his librarian, he asked him, so suppose a student who took books away from the library because he loved to read the book so much. So, and then he didn't bring back the books and he delayed in the returning the books, what would you do? And then the librarian say, yeah, this is clearly a violation of school discipline. We need to penalize him. He's stealing of our property, right? We need to deal with it seriously. And then the principal said, yes, as a librarian, you follow all the rules, you're doing the right things. You as a librarian is good at managing all the books, but you're actually sitting at the opposite side of the reader. Because the reader, the student, is the one who likes the books, but now you take away what they like in a very rule-based manner, right? So you're actually sitting at the opposite from your customer at the end. So after a period of time, the librarians notice and change. He, instead of following everything, just, okay, packaging books, make sure it's returned on time, arranging them on the bookshelf properly, he constantly communicates with teachers, students, in a more flexible and timely manner. Look for books that are actually suitable for them, design reading program that is suitable for the students. So you would say, in the past, he is only doing his job as a librarian, but now he is taking a more active role by actually actively engaging with the student teachers, right? And at the end, he's actually leaving the ceiling, taking a few more steps further, stepping out from a librarian to an educational consultant. So at the end, you will see one single job, but your attitude, how you deal with this, do make a difference. So yeah, this is the last two stories I want to share with you. I'll pass it over to Catherine, and then we will do the Q&A afterwards.
Kenneth, thank you so much. Insightful and inspirational and much appreciated. Thank you so much. Before Catherine jumps in, And please take a minute to write down any questions that you would like to ask Kenneth. You know, he will be back at about 6:10 for the Q&A session. So, you know, don't miss that opportunity to ask questions, and they can be focused either on investment messages that he gave, or also the personal messages that he gave around how he thinks about himself as a professional and the kinds of contributions that people can make. I'm going to share my screen again, and just to give you a quick warning, it's trivia quiz time. Okay, so make sure you've got your fingers near your keyboards or near your phones, and you need just to go over for people who've only joined us now. They're going to be 6 trivia questions. To answer the trivia question, you have to type the correct answer into the chat function, and you need to include your email address in that. I will do my very best to identify the person who first successfully answers that. So let me start off by resharing my screen so that I can show you the questions that we are interested in. I just don't want to give away the answers first. So let me just scroll up the screen a bit. Okay, that should be perfect. Trivia question 1. All right, let's go past Kenneth's. Okay, all right, here's the first question. What is the largest retail e-commerce company by market capitalization listed on the Hong Kong Stock Exchange? Any answers? Pop them in the chat function. Oh, these are happening very quick. All right, okay. Thank you so much. I think we have a lightning fast first answer. And just remember, Kayla, thank you for your answer. You were very quick out of the blocks, but we need an answer plus an email address. And so Jasper, congratulations. And I'm just going to click out of the chat function quickly. The correct answer, you're perfectly right, is the Alibaba Group, and I would accept Alibaba. So thank you so much for that. All right, are we ready? Hovering over those keyboards. Here comes the second question. All right. Zhong Shanshan is the owner of which beverage company in China, which makes him China's richest man? Slightly trickier one. Any offers? Let's see our YIS participants, and here we go. All right, okay. Harley, well done, but you need to give me an email address as well. Okay, all right. Okay. Samutka, thank you so much. And Harley, very quick out of the blocks, but we needed that email address. So Samutka, thank you so much for that. And the correct answer is, let's just put it up on the screen, Non-Fu Spring. Okay, all right. There's a third chance here. Are we ready? This should be a fairly quick one, I think. Okay, Albert Einstein called this the 8th wonder of the world and can result in huge gains over time. Okay, sure, that was lightning fast by Ethan Ling. So Ethan Lee, forgive me. Correct answer, ET Lee 22. Thank you so much. Lightning quick. And the correct answer is exactly that. It is compound interest, and of course is the challenge to people who come to the investing world late, as I did. Fantastic. Okay, don't go anywhere. There are more questions and more prizes. Let us start by introducing Catherine before we hand over to her. So Catherine is an equally interesting investor for us to have in the symposium today. She's a seasoned impact investor, a serial entrepreneur, which I think is a delightful term, and a public policy advocate for impact investment, carbon neutrality, and the Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs. She founded the Avant Fair Group of companies with a strong Asian presence in China, Hong Kong, and Singapore, focusing on impact investing and providing impact solutions and strategic advice to asset owners. Her investment style is top-down and oriented towards secular trends, including decarbonization, technology applications, and ESG and green businesses. So Catherine, it's fabulous as well to have you here today. thank you so much for taking our time to talk to us from your and Avant Fair's perspective. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and hand over to you. Thank you so much,
Richard.
Catherine.
Thank you, Richard, for the kind introduction. And let me as well share my screen with everyone and start the presentation. Okay, so my presentation is really about ESG and impact investing. And I try to make it a little bit more interesting in the way that we look at it from the angle of a industry participants in the future. So why it is a matter was to achieve your product A. So this is how I look into impact investments. It is your project A or your project to really achieve your life goal or your life commitment. So let me go into the next slide. So what is impact investing and what am I doing actually? So impact investing by definition is an area of ESG investments. So ESG stands for the environmental, social, and corporate governance, which are the three factors that we measure every kind of things. What I mean by every kind of things is really that everything, whatever it is, a company, a project, or how you look into things. So you can always measure things by ESG. So usually impact investing goes with a theme, which is your project A, your definition. So in our case, our project A actually means the United Nations 17 Sustainable Development Goals, as well as the Paris Agreement. We focus on this particularly too, because they actually covers a lot of a wide range of subjects, so that we have a very interesting investment space to play with. So for example, reducing poverty is one of the examples that I wanted to make to everyone, because in China right now, they have just ended the absolute poverty. And by definition of ending the absolute poverty, we actually need to have a lot of the facilities, social infrastructures, as well as local business and economics to develop. So this, by what it means by reduce of poverty, it doesn't really mean a charity foundation. It actually means that a lot of people, especially people who are earning for profits, have to participate in this kind of global missions. The goal is really to impact the society positively by what I mean positively means either societal wise that it cannot be measured by a quantifiable number, or it can be measured by a quantity. So for example, I would like to reduce the carbon footprint of my company by X%. So this is a measurable kind of goal that we wanted to achieve. Or otherwise, I wanted to say, I wanted to improve the social education condition of a poor countryside. And then how we achieve that, of course, we need to have a target to achieve that. But in addition to the target, this is a much more of a qualified target and goal. So we actually make impact investing and the social benefits together at the same time. So it doesn't mean that by making the profits, you have to pollute the earth, or it does not mean that by making the profit, you need to do something evil. So you don't have to do those evil things. You can do in good and for good. And as Richard has mentioned, my asset class is private equity. So the difference between private equity and the public market is as follows. So firstly, private equity means that the company is a private company. So it's not proceeded to the IPO stage. And it is not a public company that you can not buy shares on the stock market. So that's the first difference. So that's why, for example, if you want to buy a public company, you can just create your own stock share account, and then you can just make your purchase. But then buying a private equity or buying a private company, you have to buy, for example, you have to talk to the business owner and then to tell them, hey, I wanted to buy X% share of your company. So I take the ownership. However, whether I take an executive role, it actually depends on my negotiation with the company's owner. So this is the most simple way that I can explain what is private equity. And then in the essence of it, because the kind of asset class that we invest into is very different as comparing to the public market. So we actually take a very different strategy to evaluate whether it is going to be a successful business and to actually measure the company's valuation and other things. So despite of this measurement that we took a very different angle, we also look into other informations. And for example, we need to understand a lot more about the company's owner. For example, if Alibaba used to be a private company, then actually when they invest into Alibaba, they need to look into Jack Ma, his personality, how he will lead the company into the future. Do they have a potential to go IPO or not? And are they actually a good company to work for and work with? So the last part that I mentioned is actually the ESG measurement that we take an extra step to look into. For example, whether they take care of their employees, whether they protect their environment. So those will be the S, the E, and whether they actually have any corporate governance issues. So if you look into like Google or Baidu, then you may find some of those negative news coming out before this year. So you will see that those are actually falls into the ESG measurements that we look into for one particular company. And then the next very important and interesting thing is we look into the exit strategies. So which means that because we actually have a certain percentage of the company, so we own the company, but because we're not the parents of the company. So in one day, we're more like a teacher of the company. So after the teaching period, we may release the company, and releasing the company will have a few different possibilities. So firstly, we can actually make it IPO, so being listed on any stock listed markets. And otherwise, we can actually find a good owner, or for example, my students' next valuable teacher that would provide him or her a more valuable insight for the next stage of learning. So it's the very similar logic. So we'll find him, the company, the next owner. And most likely we'll find a good one because then we want the company to grow better. So, or otherwise we'll consider other exit strategies, for example, listing it into the digital market, like the digital coin market, which is actually available in Switzerland and other European countries. Or we may also sell it to a fund or other kind of investment banks, which is actually quite interesting, a special case in the ESG industry, because you might have noticed there are a lot of investment banks that are pretty large, international ones, like the Asian development banks. They issue debts to a lot of the projects in developing countries, for example, to helping them to protect their environment, helping them to build up a nice health system, or helping them to combat the COVID. So, but then what they wanted to invest have a lower risk. So once we invest into a company with a higher risk and helping them to grow into a more sustainable company, the company has already bring down their business risk levels. So then in the next stage, we may be able to sell them to a larger investment bank like the ADB or like, for example, European investment banks. So in that case, they will also have a good price sharing. And this is how we earn money. So in private equity sector, we earn money by selling and the exit strategies in the end. So it may actually be a very, very long time. So we usually go with the company from 3 years, 5 years to even 10 to 12 years. So you can really say that this is a kind of mentor and mentee kind of relationship actually with the company. So a lot of people may say that it sounds really utopian to tell me that I can do something or I can do investment for good. And I can, on one hand, I can make the society a better place, but then on the other hand, I can also make money. This is impossible because a lot of the adults told us it's impossible. We have to earn by polluting the air. We have to earn by polluting the soil. We have to earn because this world is cruel. So a lot of people are telling us this, but I'm gonna tell you that this is very highly achievable and I am doing this. And let me tell you why I'm doing this and how I did it. So how I became who I am. This is a non-professional slide, but what I wanted to tell you is one of the main concepts. So I have my bio, very small text sizes on the right-hand side. So I make sure that you won't read a lot of the details on it. And what I wanted to say is your life is actually a design process. So you can design what you want to do and what kind of skill sets you need in order to do that. So how you become who you want to be is the main problem and the main thinking process that you have to think about it for yourself. So a lot of the times we wanted to say that we are chasing a star, like an anime star or actually an actor stars. But actually what I wanted to say here is chasing the others or an existing route might not be the case of chasing a real star like on the sky. So this analogy is actually coming from what I wanted to say here. So you can always design whatever you want. So in my younger age, when I was in the university, I realized the same problem. I thought that finance may not be the kind of job that I want because I prefer actually to do something in the nonprofit area because I thought that those can help people a lot more. But when I was thinking about it, I also thought about why I was thinking about it because I totally feel there is a gap between making money and doing good. And I feel that this is a trade-off that I cannot solve. So when I was actually thinking about what I wanted to do after my university, I started this life design process, which means that firstly, I took a few internship jobs. And what I want is actually just to accumulate my skill sets. And when I accumulate the skill sets, I was really paying attention to how I can solve any kind of social problem using my financial skills. So then at the first internship job, I found that there was a green market and there were green and social responsible investing. At that time, it was like 10 years ago. So when I actually found this kind of area of play, I really studied into what is ESG, what is impact investing, what is responsible investing, and through all different kinds of jobs. So I have done also the regular research analyst job, asset manager's job, and I worked in a bank before, but whatever I do, I was always trying to accumulate the correct assets, the correct skill sets that I want for my dream job. So my dream job is what I created in the later stage of my company. So for example, when you think about something that nobody really knows or nobody really cares, just like environmental protection, this is really how you empower yourself by designing your life in your own terms and in your own tryouts. This is a way that you're actually finding it very useful in your later career stages. So once you find that this might not be possible, then let me think about why is this not possible? Is there any alternative solutions? Or I need to do something else in order to achieve that. So the point is really believe in the power you have, and so really challenging the status quo. There is no status quo in the market. 5 years ago, there were a lot of people saying that ESG is not making sense because you cannot earn profit without polluting the earth. But this is possible right now, and this is what we are doing. So now it is really the serious part, career planning. Just like Richard had the openings, you should really start your career planning or think about your career planning at an early stage. What you can do is really, you can find the paper and the pen, and then you can And then you can actually write down what you cherish the most before your university or during your university time. And then on the other hand of the paper, you can actually write about what you're dreaming about to do after your university or after your internship program. So this way is really to help you to find and identify the gaps you have. So on one hand, you don't want to give up what you have cherished the most. For example, spending time with my friends, learning new subjects, and having continuous learning is what you have appreciated the most. And don't give up on those, but then find out why you cannot achieve those same things in your work. And in this way, you can quickly identify the gap and then quickly to try to find the correct skill sets and the correct career path to actually close the gap. And the other tip that I want to have is do not afraid to ask questions to your senior advisors or have a coffee chat with them. Find out what you actually need to get one particular internship, one job, or one experiences. Because what I found was they were all very welcoming. They really are happy to have you to ask questions. So whatever kind of questions, don't be afraid to ask stupid questions. You can sit down with a CEO and then ask him, what do you think I need in order to get this internship job? They may as well as just tell you very honestly what you need. For example, do you need a CFA level 1? Or do you need to have your cover letter or tell me more about yourself? So you may as well start at the introduction section. And then if you find that you're in lack of any particular skill sets, then list them up and then try to give yourself a timeline in order to achieve those and then cross them out. So in this way, you actually find yourself continuous learning and continuously improving yourself. So this is actually the most serious part. For example, how we actually examine whether a potential candidate is suitable for our company. So the first thing is really the communication skills. So do not be afraid of talking to the seniors. The seniors are very kind people, so they are not they are not going to kill you or eat you. So when you face those interview conditions, please make sure that you communicate well and in a light manner. They like it because it shows your communication skills. And also when you communicate, smile a lot, and also to tell them that, you know, this is a very live conversation. And we like those because we need to have constant employee feedbacks. And the second thing, which I find is the most useful, is actually what my previous mentor, one of the CEO of a very famous North American bank, told me. Understand people, their perspectives, their interests, especially those who think the opposite of you. So what he actually told me was very interesting. He said that in his internship time, he was always the person who did not speak a lot, but he understands and he tried to listen to what people are talking. And he was not just listening, he was really actively listening. By actively listening, it actually means that when I listen to a conversation, I try to figure out what they think at the background. For example, what is their real interest? What is their meeting objective and meeting target? Have they achieved their target? If I can help them to facilitate the conversation and help them to achieve the target. So this is actually an active listening. And if you have this active listening skill, you're actually the person behind the scene controlling the whole table. So I think this advice is really important. For example, if you're going into a university and you have met a lot of new students, this is also very important that you understand the others, how they think about things. And, you know, like to have a really good learning and living environment like surrounding you. So those two are really important. So in my job, what we also examine our candidates is, have you ever thought about your relationship with the global missions like the Paris Agreement and the local initiatives, like for example, like the ones in Hong Kong that we currently have, like protecting the water, protecting the sea animals and environment. So have you ever thought about those and your relationship with those global missions? Because what kind of employees we want to have is the ones that who actively try to find solutions to the society. And we want those kind of creativity. It doesn't really matter about what you actually know at the moment, but it matters a lot in terms of your intention. So this is what we look into for impact investing candidates. And let me tell you one interesting fact. So before I came into the asset management industry, I do not know what is asset management. And when they asked me what I wanted to do, I said I wanted to do due diligence because I thought it's really like a detective process that I'm actually examining a case, and that's really interesting. And then for the founder of Blackstone, the largest asset management firm, Steven Schwarzman, when he had his first job in the Lehman Brothers, he actually did not know what is investment banking. So he started from knowledge zero, understanding what is investment banking. So it doesn't really matter if you understand a lot about the industry, but it's really those subtle and basic skill sets that is more important for us to see your potential growth. And the other thing that we actually look into is not your qualifications. Like we have seen a lot of candidates with like CFA, FRM, CPA, blah, 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 and they have a lot of them. But we don't really look into them. We look into your learning curve, which means how fast you can quickly grab a knowledge and something that you have never seen before or looked into before. For example, just the same case that Kenneth just presented, the Harry Potter game, right? So how fast you can actually grab the way of earning revenue of this Harry Potter game, and how fast do you would you be able to understand what is gaming industry? This is more important than you can show the your future employer an exact figure or tell him that what is the oil price today, because at least in my case, I don't really ask this kind of question. So I have made this very simple presentation. I'm awaiting for a lot more questions, and thank you very much for listening. Just remember to believe in your own power.
Catherine, thank you so much. I'm going to invite you to stop sharing your screen, and we just so appreciate this, you know, the kind of innovation and thinking behind this presentation. And I thought, you know, while we're going to go to another round of trivia now, so there's another opportunity for people to win a prize and, you know, sort of keep yourself on your feet. But before we do, I want to just pick out a couple of commonalities that I think are really interesting here. The notion of having a clear vision of yourself, you know, and what it is that you want to do. And I love the sort of concept of design thinking your own life. I think that is such good advice. And I think careers are on so many levels, quite like investing, you know, be thoughtful, you know, carefully assess opportunities, and make decisions that have a long-term outcome. The second thing is the notion of being upstanding and good. And I love Catherine's comments about contributions that matter rather than just outcomes that reflect greed. So I think that was also very interesting. And I think one of the big principles of Young Investor Society is being an upstanding investor and investing in upstanding companies. I loved what Kenneth's equation, okay? Because again, there's this sense of like incremental, you know, gaining of knowledge and wisdom. And I think it's such a a wonderful mathematical equation. Kenneth, I took a photo of that to share with my kids, the difference between going forward and backwards. And I think this, the other thing also just to remind people is things that perhaps would surprise young investors about people who are operating and functioning in the industry. And key issue of an interest in people, curiosity, communication skills. I just think that those ran very strongly across both those presentations. Okay, so let's get back to the trivia, shall we? And I hope that everyone is ready to go. I'm going to take you immediately, and same rules apply. Correct answer plus email address is going to get you a prize, and I hope I do this accurately and correctly. So let's go. Right. This legendary investor bought his first stock when he was 11 years old. He had made $53,000 by the age of 16, and he was rejected by Harvard Business School. Who are we talking about? Who's one of the most famous investors we have? Okay, excellent. And we have some lightning responses here. So thank you so much for those. And you are perfectly correct. The answer is none other, if I can get my screen to work, than Warren Buffett. I also think his partner, Charlie Munger, is very interesting. So it's worth having a look at some of his thinking. Moving on to the next one. Are you ready? We're going to move on to question 5. Benjamin Graham, the father of value investing and author of The Intelligent Investor, was a longtime professor at what esteemed university? And let's see if we can get some of those answers in there. Fantastic. All right. Samutka, very smart of you. Okay. So just to give everyone the answer to that question, and the question is Columbia University. And how wonderful that we have an alumni of Columbia University as one of our speakers here today. So how appropriate. Okay, our final trivia question for the day. Are you ready? Who was the first shark of ABC's Shark Tank to host an interview with a YIS student? And again, we've got some lightning answers here. There are many of them. Thank you very much. I have to say, I envy your keyboard and entry skills, and those answers are quite right. And here we have him, Mark Cuban, who is the first shark of ABC's Shark Tank to be interviewed. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we are going to move to a question and answer session. And I think that just to reiterate what our speakers have said, it's critical that people feel confident to ask questions. And the questions aren't necessarily questions that the person you're asking the question of, but don't be shy, put the best foot forward. You've got 2 very interesting investors here, and I'm going to invite you to enter your questions into the chat function, and I will make selections from those. It would be fantastic if we could have a question from each person. While we wait for people to shape those questions, I'm going to start off and ask Kenneth a slightly challenging question. So Kenneth, internet and gaming stocks have quite often been the darling of ESG investors in the sense that they perform quite well on ESG screens. However, increasingly, there's been a concern about the lives of young people that has generated sort of policy headwinds in China. And I wanted to ask you, how have these policy headwinds impacted valuation? And what advice would you have for young investors who are interested in the internet and gaming sector because they themselves are digital natives? So it's a kind of compound question. So over to you. Thanks. I'm going to end my screen share as well so we can see each other and speak.
Sure. Hey, thank you. Thank you, Richard. Yes, the policy overhang has been one of the key drag for the sector over the past 1.5 years. You start with the antitrust, any monopoly investigation on Alibaba, and then gradually spread on the other internet names. That's why last year was pretty bad for the sector overall, which I think more over the past 10 years, right? I think the Chinese government took a more kind of off the hand rope and let them develop first, because they are kind of new industry, so that basically let them grow, and then a lot of regulation not really in place. And then now with the internet platform go bigger, so they need to think about more on the social impact side. For example, like you mentioned very well, like the protection on kids, protection on minors. A lot of internet companies, online games, because they make money for the from the online gamers, right? And the game itself, the design of the game itself is actually to make you addictive, right? So to addict into the games and are willing to pay, this is what the game is designed for, right? Is how they make money. They will put a lot of features like lucky draw, some kind of a chance-based things to make you kind of more addicted to the games. Then, if the kids who are in school are not able to control themselves, then they will kind of affect the normal like social life, school, and then the other natural like learning or reading process. So that's why over the past few months, the regulator has been putting on more and more measures. Now, I think you guys are pretty lucky. In China, you can only play TV games if you have kids 3 hours per week, and this is only for 3 specific hours, 7 to 8 o'clock, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. You miss it, and then you're done. So no more, you need to wait for the next week. So I think these are some of the more strict measures that put out by the government. I think the incentive is good, right? You make sure that the kids are more like well-rounded development. This, I think, will put a more sustainable development for the whole industry. If you step back, what technology does is actually for to build a better society, right? So to help like the merchants to generate more and more merchants to generate more revenue, to make us learn things faster, right? To create a more easy environment to do things more effectively. So I think the regulator has been balancing between what technology can done on the good side and what are the drawbacks. And that have been more put in place over the past 1.5 years after the rapid growth for the sector over the past 10 years. The investment implication will be, I think, you need to look at what kind of industry, right? How much of them is already reflected in their earnings. For example, the minor protection started in September last year. So you have 2 quarters of impact already. Then you kind of see how much is already reflected in earnings and share price. Some of them have been ongoing for more than 1 year, or especially, for example, on the e-commerce front. So, and some of them may come, right, for the short videos. Like I used the example earlier, TikTok, Kuaishou, when you watch the short videos, right, people, they actually have no like time limits that you can put. That itself could be some potential regulatory risk coming. So as an investor, you need to think, well, what have they done? What are they in the regulatory cycle? What are the potential impact? And if there is, and how much is the impact, whether they're factoring in the share price?
Kenneth, thanks so much, and such a detailed and helpful answer. I'm not seeing any questions in the chat, so I'm going to keep going if that's okay. Here we go. Thank you so much, Shane. So there is a question for Kenneth here. Kenneth, could you talk us through your career path from sort of university to your current position? You sort of touched on that, and I think people are, probably interested in contrasting it or comparing it or understanding how that might be different to Catherine's. So could you talk us through that?
Sure. I did my undergrad in accounting degree. So in Hong Kong, a natural progression after I get accounting degree is to go into audit firm. So that's why I worked for Pricewaterhouse for 7 years. And then afterwards, the nature of the audit is basically to look at the accounting numbers, right? To make sure they're presented properly, whether they are presented according to the accounting standards, right? So at one stage, I'm thinking accounting on auditing a little bit more backward looking. You look at what I have done in the past 1 year, 1 quarter, 6 months, and then you audit the numbers. right? I want to do something which is more forward-looking. That how about based on the numbers that I know, what is going to drive the company into the future, right? So how about the growth? What are the opportunity? What the industry is evolving? So that's why I'm after I did 6-7 years in accounting, I did an MBA, and then moved into equity research, which is kind of like a natural skills that, because equity research I also mentioned, right? You need to have financial modeling skills, accounting skills, communications. These are all built up by my career that I learned in the Pricewaterhouse, and together with my MBA. So I would say it's a that is the driving for my transition in the career. But at the end, this is for my own, right, personal experience. I think for to the audience here today, I think at the end, you need to find something that you have passion, something that you like, you enjoy. So I think that is actually more important.
Kenneth, fantastic. I'll ask another question that's come in from Jesse for Kenneth. Kenneth, you mentioned Kaoshou e-commerce platform as an example. May I ask, after some well-known Chinese internet celebrities were punished for tax evasion, what impact will it have on Chinese e-commerce platforms? Great, Catherine, we'll come back to you, but it's a tough question. Any thoughts, Kenneth?
The questions today are very technical, very up to date. Yes, the tech. So this is one of the other example, right, I used earlier. So after the rapid growth for the past 10 years, a lot of the unregulated areas that the government actually needs to step in, right? In the virtual world, there may not be very well-defined like regulations, like protection of minors, antitrust, all this stuff. And then tax evasion is also part of it, because in a kind of virtual world, when you sell stuff on through the e-commerce, live streaming e-commerce platform, sometimes a lot of the KOL I use a lot of tax. I won't completely say evasion. Some of them are kind of minimizing the tax liability, looking at tax regulation loopholes, and then try to pay a lower tax. So I think for China, one of the goals is to go for like a fair society. And then one of the themes they push for is a common prosperity, right? Is for those who have succeeded to help out who are still on the middle or the grassroots kind of people. So tax evasion for the top KOL will make a lot of money. Obviously, it's not a good example that people should follow, right? I think that is the goal, the rationale that they're going after them. In terms of the impact on live streaming e-commerce, the platforms will be impact on the shorter term. But I think what the platform is also kind of doing is they should also think, should I be relying so much on the top KOL, or I should spread it across different smaller KOLs, right? This is the first thing. The other thing is, how about the shops, they live streaming this from the staff themselves, rather than I hire KOL. So there is also some changing in terms of the model as well, from the using like a top 2 to 3 KOL doing a majority of the business, by now spreading the risks across like different ones, as well as the shops also doing the live streaming themselves. So short term, yes, there is some impact on the growth. There will be a more discipline in the sector, but I think it will pave way for more sustainable growth. And this that always happens to any new industry, right? So you grow and then you stop, or the regulation hit or something, and then that will drive a more structural change in industry. That will drive it more sustainable and healthy into the future.
Kenneth, thanks so much. And I love our young investors hitting you with technical questions. Catherine, I think you are back. So I wanted to come back to you and ask you 2 questions, or actually 3 questions, because I just see another one's come in. It's always so helpful for people to understand a journey at this point in their careers. So could you talk us through your journey, sort of from school through university and into the position you're in now? You touched on it during your presentation, but it would be wonderful to hear that.
Yeah, so can you hear me clearly, Richard? Sorry, I had a tech issue just now, so
no,
I cannot unmute myself.
Crystal clear, thank you. Yeah,
Great.
Thanks, Catherine.
So, I actually spent my A-level times in the UK, in Cambridgeshire. And then I went to the UK university as well. And after my UK university, I also did another MBA degree in Canada because my parents are actually living in Canada. Right now, I am also living in Hong Kong. So you can see that in my early career, I actually had moved in a lot of different places and have experienced a lot of different culture as well. So during my A-level and university times, I actually stayed not only in the UK for a longer period, I also have stayed in Germany, France, and also Japan for a quite a long time. So having all these different kinds of cultural understandings, as well as living locally with the people, give me a lot of different perspectives. For example, how one particular business has been looked in very different ways by different cultures and have been developed in very different ways by different societies. For example, the matching platform like Alibaba in the UK or in Japan are very different as comparing to what we have here in China. It's really because people's purchasing behaviors are not exactly the same, although they all prefer to buy online, right? So, and then in the other thing that I actually feel it's been really important for me is really in my A-level time, when I was applying for the universities, my principal asked me a question in terms of like what you wanted to do after your graduation, because your interviewer in the university will ask you. So I was like, I don't have any idea because I don't even know if what I want to do have it, like if they have the job market in the future, because what I'm doing right now, impact investing, like 10, 20 years ago, we don't have this market. So I said I wanted to use my what I learned, the financial professional skill sets to do something for the society. So my principal told me, this means you wanted to be a social engineer. So whenever in the future, when I thought about what I wanted to do, I always go back to the great, like the macro definition. So I don't really limit myself into the definition that I wanted to be an asset manager, a fund manager, a private equity investor. But what I wanted to do is a social engineer. And by having the financial skill sets is one of the ways for me to achieve my goal, to become a social engineer and to help the society to have a better design, better investment in infrastructure, or a better reaching the common prosperity, for example. So by having a larger vision, you'll be able to find those smaller steps to move forward.
That's great. Thank you so much, Catherine. And the questions are coming in, so thank you. What I'm going to do is there's a technical ESG question, which I think is interesting. So that question was to Catherine, how can investors quantify ESG performance and ESG measures, or perhaps the other way around? How can investors quantify ESG measures and make judgments about ESG performance on the back of that? Any thoughts on that question? It's quite a broad question.
Yeah, it's quite a broad question, but surprisingly, a lot of the investors will ask me the same question. How do you quantify ESG? So it's really a deep question to ask for, actually. So thank you so much for the question, Juan. And I wanted to say that measuring ESG is a continuous process of developing how to measure ESG, in fact. So this is true that we cannot 100% measure ESG. However, we can measure most of them. For example, the carbon footprint has been a well-developed kind of industry of measurements right now. For example, in the accounting area, there has already been a SASB common definition about how to measure ESG elements of companies. And this is one of the ways to measure a company, their values of in terms of ESG. But we also have other kind of measurement to measure ESG. For example, we have one called the GRI, and then the other one called the IRIS Plus. So we have very different ways to measure it, but then it actually depends on how investors or how the accountants are looking into the industry. So they may actually, from a larger picture, is what they are doing is, firstly, they will divide industries differently. And then when they divide the industry, they will divide the companies according to the industry. For example, a real estate company, their ESG measurements will be focusing on the materials first. And then when the building and constructions are going on, would they actually pollute the environment? And then the social elements will be adding on top of that. For example, they will also challenging the real estate builder that are they actually removing the local communities out of the way, or they're actually supporting this local community as a part of the holistic stakeholder carings. So ESG really coming in step by step from a macro level to a really detailed level. And we can measure everything actually in very detailed sense. For example, in the G sector, like corporate governance, while the company have a board, what is the board structure? How many percentage of female are contained in the board? And what other kind of board elements, how many kind of meetings do they have, what they discuss during the meetings? And we will also have two measurements methodologies. First one is to tick boxes. Like if we have 10 score, we tick 9 boxes, then they got 9 scores out of 10. And the other way we measure it is, for example, how much carbohydrate you have, so how much CO2 and other greenhouse gases you polluted into the air, how much you offset it by, for example, planting trees and buying carbon credits, for example. So we have two different methods to measure it.
Great, thank you so much for that, Catherine. I think we've got time for 2 more questions. And just to call out, there's some things that are really worth looking at in Catherine's answer there, and I'll just pick out a couple: SASB and the materiality maps that they offer, GRI. You know, so there's sort of further learning and thinking to go from there. I'm going to take 2 investment questions, and please accept my apologies to people whose questions I jumped over. The first one I'm going to ask Kenneth, because it's an intriguing question and a tough one. And that is, do you think the metaverse will be a popular future investment? And do you think it will be, you know, something quite significant in society? So, yeah, any thoughts on that, Kenneth? And then I'll come back with a final question for Catherine.
Sure. I think at the end, let's say, if you think about metaverse, right? So you have the people and you have the content, right? And then you have the kind of tools in between that enhance the whole process, right? And then you kind of create a more immersive kind of environment. I would say different countries will have a different models of a metaverse at the end, partly based on the culture, and then partly will be the regulations. For example, in China, all the new games needs to be approved by the regulator before you can launch. So metaverse is basically inside the virtual world, you can create more user-generated content, right? So if you are having a virtual world and then you create content inside, whether the regulator will allow that, right? That you can bypass the whole regulation, so this is one thing. The other thing is the culture is quite different between the US and China. For example, in the US, Roblox is very hit because the kids are more like the kind of creative user-generated content. Whereas the gamers in China, partly is regulation. Imagine if you're kids, you can only play 3 hours per week, right? Do you have so much time to create all the content in Roblox? I may as well consume like 3 hours of Honor of King or PUBG, right? This is more direct and enjoyable. So I think at the end, different countries, based on the culture, regulation of different mode, different means. At this stage, I would say the hardware is not that user-friendly, or it's not just smooth to make the experience so smooth at this stage, because metaverse is only not for only games. A lot of them are education, work, they will also be related. But for example, today, where we have a Zoom that so far has interaction, we see face-to-face, so far been pretty smooth, right? Do we need everyone to wear a big goggles and then see everyone in the virtual world? Not necessarily. So what will make us to take to that level, I think we'll need to have a lot more like a technology enhancement. For example, these these VR, AR machines, right? Sometimes when I wear it for 15, 20 minutes, I feel dizzy myself. Immersion for wear it for 1 or 2 hours meeting. So I think definitely metaverse is a concept, but the goal is basically to create enriching experience to enhance the content delivery kind of process to ultimate consumer. I would say at this stage is still a little bit early.
Yeah, thanks. A really thoughtful answer that. And Catherine, I'm gonna roll up 2 questions to ask you. So the first question, which I think is an interesting one, and thank you, Jamie. If I'd like to get a job in ESG or impact investment or in 3 or 4 years' time, but my major has nothing to do with finance, what would your advice to me be? And it's a tough question, so thank you for being willing to take it. And then just an add-on to that question was another question, which in effect was, how valuable was living in different countries for you? So that's a kind of a double question, a career advice question, and then just, perhaps some further comment on that multinational experience you've had.
So actually, I think both of the questions are very interesting. So Jamie, thank you for asking me this question. If you want to tell me what is your major or what you're planning to do in your university, you may as well type it there for me. So actually, we don't care about your major in the university because impact investing is a fast developing new area in the industry. So we don't really need a lot of financial professionals at the moment, but what we need is a lot of new ideas, creativities. For example, I am myself actually learning international affairs at the King's College London online at the moment, another master degree. And another colleague of mine, so one of my valuable employee, he is learning space technology at Johns Hopkins. And the reason is because he wants to invest in the space technologies and the public market over the US. So those are seemingly unrelated subjects, but then the skill sets you have got within those degree courses and your major is more important than what you have actually learned, like the knowledge part. So for example, do you have the capability to do a research project? What is your perspective in looking into the world? For example, when I was doing my major was economics and statistical science. So when I was looking into finance, I took a very quantitative way of looking into finance and how social science has been played within by numbers and chances. But then right now, because I'm dealing with a lot with international organizations, with Paris Agreement, so when I look into the news, I find that I actually do not completely understand what, for example, foreign affairs, the article are actually referring to. So when I'm doing the course of international affairs, I started to understand more about different countries' background, what their collective memories are, and then what the policy implications will be in the future. So by having all this knowledge, it actually helps me to make business decision in terms of, for example, if Ukraine and Russia is continue to do that, how ESG factors will be affected by the war. And those are very practical questions and practical but valuable different perspectives that I can look into things. So for one apple, you actually have very different perspectives according to your major. So I really don't think major is really important. But hey, I'm saying that she's learning. You're learning language and linguistics, which is perfect because I learned 9 languages right now, and I find it's really important for me to my due diligence. So by asking a question to a French in English, they will feel completely different if you ask them a question in French. And they will immediately respond to you in the correct term that they feel and they understand in French, which is wonderful. So Jamie, you'll find yourself very capable in financial sector. The other question actually is very related. So having international experiences is not really that necessary. But the reason for me myself is that I'm super interested in different culture. Like I'm so interested in Arabic culture, Israel culture, in addition to all these European cultures and their dynamics. So I must say that if you never have the opportunity to live in a country, but don't stop traveling, because traveling is also very important. But we don't really, like ask our employee, you have to do what and what. So this is totally a personal decision. But I would say that having different personal life experiences, it will definitely enrich yourself and making yourself a more interesting person to the others. And this is the most valuable things that you should look into by having all this like extra activities. And most importantly, enjoy yourself. All the games that that Kenneth has just mentioned, I'm also playing at the moment, like Harry Potter, Genshin Impact, all different kinds of games. So yeah, so enjoy yourself as well.
Catherine, thank you so much. Kenneth, thank you so much. I'm so grateful to both of you. It's such a contribution that you've made to the lives of young people here. I know I speak for everyone on the call. Just immense thanks from all participants, from YIS, and from our sponsors as well, who really want to kind of connect these messages and the wisdoms that you've brought to this. Sincere thanks to everyone. We wish you all well, stay well, look after each other, look after your families and friends, and we look forward to seeing you at the next YS event. Catherine and Kenneth, a final thank you to both of you. Exceptional.
Welcome.
Have a good evening. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.